this on record, both through, in presence and also what comes in online in through various media. So please let us know that you're here.
Okay, you're live.
You ready? Good evening, I'm Ann Gordon-Curran, and I get the speakers for this meeting, the professional lecture series that we have this year, six months out of the year, between September and June usually. Mrs. Peggy Chan has been learning Bowen theory since the early 1990s. She began her training in Vancouver, Canada, and as a result of her obvious interest, was recommended to continue her training at the Bowen Center, where she attended the postgraduate program from 2008 to 2013. In 2013, she joined the research seminar at the Bowen Center, where she continues in that vein. Mrs. Chan is from China, but now lives in Hong Kong, where she continues to reside with her family and has significant professional involvement. She has a Bachelor of Social Science from Hong Kong University and a Master's in Education from the University of Toronto, Canada. With her significant professional exposure in several countries, she became coordinator of the second international conference in Bowen Family Systems Theory held in Hong Kong in May 2018. She was chiefly responsible for the planning and implementation of a most successful event and describes the experience as delightful and inspiring. She finds Bowen theory very helpful in understanding human behavior and multi-generational relationship systems. She hopes to do more teaching and learning about how to apply Bowen theory in the Chinese culture. Her present focus in her work is how we use family systems thinking to discuss ways to enhance Chinese women's functioning, to understand better the dynamics of in-law relationships, and to be able to see and address societal emotional process in Hong Kong. She very clearly used what she's learned through Bowen theory to manage with her family during the recent civil unrest in Hong Kong, and I hope she will be able to present some of her ideas at some point in the future. Mrs. Chan has presented papers at the 51st and 55th Bowen Theory Symposia and at conferences in Houston, Texas, and Taiwan. She also has conducted training programs in China and Hong Kong. She works as a family therapist with the International Social Service Hong Kong branch, a non-governmental organization in Hong Kong. In 2002, she started the ISS Family Institute under this organization to promote Bowen theory in Hong Kong, providing training programs and counseling services. Mrs. Chan is the fifth child in a sibling group of 8, with an older sister who was adopted out at a few months of age. She is married and has an older daughter and a younger son, both of whom are married, each with 2 young children. Mrs. Chan is excited with her new roles as mother-in-law and a grandmother of four ranging in ages from 5 years to 10 months. As you can imagine, with all that she balances in her life, that her downtime pleasures are attending movies and listening to music. Let's welcome Mrs. Peggy Chan, who will talk tonight on in-law triangles. Thank you, Peggy.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to Anne, especially for giving me this opportunity to talk about this topic. In-law triangles. In-law relationship is one of the very most intense and challenging relationships in our families, in Hong Kong, in Chinese families. Why? I think there's so much physical and emotional interdependencies in our families that really give rise to a lot of intensities in this relationship. So I will talk about these 6 areas in this lecture. So firstly, what contributes to the intensity of this relationship in the Hong Kong families? Hong Kong context. Secondly, is about the emotional process involved. And third, about the common patterns that we see in these families. Fourth, the unresolved emotional attachment of the different parties. The fifth, and voices from different parties. The sixth, the way to go, the do's. Okay, so in-law relationships in Hong Kong, as I said, there's a high degree of physical and emotional interdependency among the family members. How so? Like, firstly, living space. As compared to here, of course, it's easier to get a place for the nuclear family, but in Hong Kong, living space is very limited. So often, families, nuclear families, and extended families may have to live together. So nowadays, more and more young people cannot afford to have their own living space. So even after being married, they will still stay with their own parents. And so living space is very, very crowded. So about the ownership and the use of space, that can give way to quite a lot of tension. And so then the relationship amongst the in-laws can be quite contentious. And secondly is about the childcare of the grandchildren. In Hong Kong families, the grandparents play a very important role in childcare of the families. And they are often function as nannies to the grandchildren, as housekeepers, supervising the domestic helpers, and managing the family's life routine, like cooking or even washing laundry. So these are often done on a regular, day-to-day basis. In some cases, the mother-in-law may be the de facto female leader of the family, while the husband, the wife, may have to go out to work together. So imagine that the grandparents is taking such great care of the grandchildren, and then there also comes in the mother, the father. So who's in charge? Who play a bigger role in disciplining the children? Whose parenting style you have to adopt to? These can be areas of big argument. And the other way is lifestyle and living habits. Also household chores, who to do what kind of household chores, and also financial support. In the traditional families, the adult son may have the obligation to give some money to support the parents. But in the more modern families, some of the young people may not have good jobs. So in return, still the parents may have to give the financial support to the families, even though some of them may have already married. So all these areas may contribute to the families living together and relating with each other on a very close day-to-day basis, having a lot of differences to deal with. Also, in families in Hong Kong, there may be some difference in the cultural expectations. Mother-in-law, being more elderly, they may often come from another framework, a hierarchical framework. So when they were as daughters-in-law themselves, they may have to obey their own mother-in-law and have a lot of suffering. And so they will still operate very much from a hierarchical framework and expect that their daughters-in-law will do the same, that their daughter-in-law will have to expect, will have to be more obedient and defer to them as they have done in their olden days. And this grandmother, daughter-in-law, mother-in-law may also have a looser sense of the boundary of the family. Even though the son have married and the daughter-in-law coming in, the sense of the young couple having a distinct family unit may not appear as very obvious or distinct to the mother-in-law. So for the mother-in-law, they may still see that the son is still in the family. It's just having a younger woman joining in the family. So some mother-in-law would say that you just add one more pair of chopsticks to the family, right? So there's not very conscious sense that with the coming in of the young couple, the boundary of the family will have to be different, that you have to adapt to two different families. However, for the daughter-in-law, being younger and usually more Western educated, they will expect a more equal relationship. Although they will still know that they need to respect their elders and their their mother-in-law, but still they will expect that it's more or less equal. And also, they will expect more well-defined nuclear family boundaries, and that most of the young women will hope that their families can be a distinct unit of their own, a nuclear family of their own, and they will expect that there will be less interference from the husband's extended family. So these are the ideals of the daughters-in-law, usually, most of the time. Another factor is that it's about the cultural differences within the families. In Hong Kong nowadays, actually there can be quite a lot of differences within the same family, because some of the daughters-in-law may be from China. So in Hong Kong, some men will go to China to get wives. And so they will bring in their wives born and brought up from China into their families. And so in the families, there may be two kinds of culture, the Hong Kong culture and the mainland China culture. So we may have different way of looking at things, different viewpoints, different values, and different life habits. So these differences may contribute to much tension within the family. And then the other thing is about the difficult experiences of the parents-in-law. Some of the families, especially the relatively poor grassroots families, their parents may have gone through a lot of painful history in the past. Like they may have gone through the persecution, the Cultural Revolution, a lot of poverty in China. So when they came to Hong Kong to join their families, these experiences may still linger in their memories and affect how they deal with people. So the chronic anxiety of the family may be high, and there's more rigidity. So due to Hong Kong's specific situation, where living standard is high, housing supply is scarce, and many families have to be dual career families, grandparents can be a great help for children, for childcare and supervision of the domestic maid. And these physical interdependencies in cultural expectation set the stage for intensities in these in-law relationships, developing many potential external stresses and exposing more areas of differences through frequent contacts, right? And given the potentials for many external stresses, how each party cope with these stresses, whether they can handle the stresses maturely or allow their unresolved emotional attachment rule over them, creating havoc in the relationships can have a big impact on the multi-generational family system. So this is a background of some of these families. And so on top of this background, I think for families with in-laws, they also have to go through some developmental challenges, like for transfer of loyalty and struggle for influence. So for the young couple to get married, the young spouse, need to learn to transfer their loyalty from their biological parent onto their spouse. And also the biological parent need to learn to let go of the control or the influence for the adult child. Yeah, so another thing is that the couple and the elderlies will also struggle for influence. Like, am I important enough for the young spouse to listen to me, or whose influence will be there? So a struggle for influence between the biological parents and the spouses as well. And I think the in-law relationships and the spouse relationships, both sets of relationships are very important. And the families will function better if these two sets of relationships are in balance, so that the spouse can each be well connected with their family of origin, so that the family of origin can act as a resource for the young couple to weather the challenges that they will have to deal with in their later days. While at the same time, the couple needs to see that their own marital relationship is also important. Their marital relationship should be of primary importance. So having the two sets of relationship in balance, I think, is one way that the family should go towards, so that when they're in balance, the health of the family can be can be good. Okay, so for in-laws, when young couples marry, one of the very big concern of the wives especially would be, where will we live? Who will I live with? Who will we live with? So one of the very frequent questions asked by the young wives would be, do I have to live with your parents after our marriage? Yeah, this is the most dreaded question of some of the young wives. For many husbands-to-be, yeah, they have to tell the cruel truths to their wives. Yes, I need to take care of my parents, or yes, we do not have the financial means to have our own place, so we have to stay with our parents. And then that begins the beginning of a very, very interesting, stimulating, or difficult journey. Just to see how in-law relationship is a hot topic in Hong Kong. So I browsed the website and found this Facebook account. This Facebook account is for the agitated young wives. So there's this Facebook account opened by daughter-in-law. At first, she just thought of spilling her grievances, but then she found that this Facebook account is so popular. A lot of people, a lot of daughter-in-law pour in their grievances and share in this Facebook account. So this Facebook account reveals a lot of the grievances of the daughter-in-law. So I did some content analysis of these posts. So these posts by these agitated daughter-in-law mainly center around these few areas: the unreasonableness of the parents-in-law, the intrusiveness, lack of respect for the young couple's privacy, the lack of respect for the daughters-in-law by the parents-in-law, the expectation or requirement to do much errands for the parents-in-law and even the clan. So maybe the uncle of a distant uncle of the of the mother-in-law came in town. So this young wife or young daughter-in-law is expected to do errands for this distant relatives. And then daughters-in-law striving for the post also reveals quite a number of daughters-in-law striving very hard to please the parents-in-law by serving the parents-in-law to a great extent, and yet finding a great lack of appreciation and lack of support from them. So they feel very dejected and disappointed, agitated. Some of these daughter-in-law took on a victim stance, sharing their frustration and sadness, expecting to be consoled online. However, these posts, some of the posts also reflect some refreshing systemic perspectives and challenges about the self-responsibility of the person sharing the stress. So occasionally, I get response from the Facebook saying that, where was your husband in all of this? And how did you get yourself to do all of these chores for a husband's clan? So sometimes can be some refreshing comments. So as you can see, given the transfer of loyalty, the fear of losing interest, losing influence and attachment, plus the external stresses, the concerned parties, all the in-laws, can face much anxiety. When people are anxious, people engage in automatic emotional processes such as triangling. Triangles. Triangles is a form of automatic reaction to perceived threat in the relationship. A third party is involved to dissipate the tension between the two original partners by such as allying or gossiping. When triangles may serve a function by discharging some of the tension to another party, they also serve to aggravate more tension in the system and in the long run, making the relationship more complicated and intense. However, if one person can stay calm and differentiate, the whole system can calm down. So managing self in these heated triangles, noting the facts of functioning can be helpful. And de-triangling is one of the main concepts that Dr. Bowen mentioned. This is part of the central concept about triangles. Conflict between two people will resolve automatically if both remain in emotional contact with a third person who can relate actively to both without taking sides with either. So while we were in triangles, especially in these in-law relationships, maintaining emotional neutrality and also emotional contact with family members is very important. And from Kerr and Bowen, it says that emotional neutrality is reflected in a number of ways, two of which are especially relevant to triangles. First, the ability to see both sides of a relationship process between two others, and second, the ability not to have one's thinking about that process clouded with notion about what should be. So avoiding judgmental decisions, side-taking, avoidance and blaming, and consider facts and maintains broad perspective of time and events will be helpful. So what are the common patterns of triangles in in-law relationships in Hong Kong families? I would say this first pattern is about the loyalty triangle, comprising an overly close relationship between adult child and biological parent. So in this triangle, we see the husband and the father and the mother is actually very close, while his relationship with the wife is a bit distant. And very often, this husband will say to the wife, in case there's arguments between the wife and his mother, the husband will simply say, you concede to her, abide by mom's ideas, you just accommodate to her. And the husband will play a laid-back role and hope that the two women can deal with each other and don't create too much trouble for him.
Sorry. Peggy, could you move one step to your right? People on Facebook Live, I don't think can see your slide. Sorry. Okay. One, like maybe half step. Yeah. Oh. Okay, that's better. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So for this husband, for him, he would expect the wife to accommodate to the mother-in-law to create less trouble. So not to challenge the mother's rules. So I need to, I can.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I can.
Hold on. All right. So you, when you're back there, you can't see
Yeah.
slides. Okay. Could you move like half step over there? Sorry. Okay. Okay. I think that's fine. Yeah. Go ahead and stay over there.
Okay, yeah. So for this man, he may feel that he's not really, actually he may not have emotionally left his parents. There's restriction on him to exercise his own emotional autonomy for himself and for his own young family. Partly, sometimes, he may be living on his parents, in his parents' apartment still. So financially, in some way, dependent. And there's also the cultural expectation for him to have filial piety to his parents. And so in this case, the parents' influence is bigger on him than the spouse's influence. So the attachment and loyalty to the parents were more important to him than the marriage. So consequently, of course, the wife will feel like an outsider, being peripheral, and finding that she's unable to get a rightful position in her husband's family, unable to get the bond with the husband that she wants, and resulting in quite a lot of conflict with the mother-in-law. Yeah, so this will be pattern one, conflict between the mother-in-law and the wife, with the husband being very close with the mother. Okay, so what can we do with it? Yeah, the clinical strategies. I think it's important for a young couple to realize the importance of the marital diet, and while keeping a connection with the family of origin. Helping the, especially the man, the husband, to realize his new role, his function as leader of his nuclear family, and how he can really be more of a self to his parents will be important. On the other hand, helping the biological parents, besides young couple, to work on changes that they are facing and have to cope with as a result of their young child's marriage will be helpful too, so that the biological parents have to realize that there are changes going on that they need to cope with. Okay, second pattern. This pattern also about mother and wife in battle with a helpless husband. So, husband and wife, the wife is usually a more dominant partner of the marriage, while the husband is the adaptive partner of the marriage. And husband also have close relationship with the mother. However, a lot of stuff was dealt with between the two women, and a lot of conflict as well. So after severe conflict, the daughter-in-law frequently cut off contact with the parents-in-law, but allow the children and husband to have regular contact with the in-laws. So we have situation that the daughter-in-law would not see the parents-in-law at all, but she will allow the husband to take the kids to see the parents-in-law. So the trajectory of many Hong Kong families with in-law issues will end up like this. So firstly, they live under the same roof at the beginning of their marriage, and then due to living together, give rise to a lot of tension, severe conflict, and after a lot of conflict and they cannot tolerate anymore, so the young couple move out, and after moving out, the woman, the daughter-in-law especially, will cut off from the parents-in-law. But in most of cases, the husband will still maintain contact with his own mother and will also bring the children to see the parents. So in a way, it's a partial cut-off, while the wife would frequently have a total cut-off. And so this is quite common situation amongst the families now. So it's not desirable. So I think if we can have the situation somehow moderated when they were within the same family, having severe conflict and having the knowledge to deal with conflict in a more healthy way, then we can have the situation less drastic. Because having the wife cut off and with the children and the husband maintaining partial contact with the grandparents, of course, has impact on the well-being of the whole family. So clinical strategies will involve like helping to the couple to review how the process of cut-off and intensity come about. What did the couple did or the other person did that allowed this kind of, that promoted this kind of intensity. Also help couple to reflect on the function of the nuclear family, how they set boundaries and limit settings, and to work towards bridging the cut-offs. Pattern 3. So there's pattern that when the in-laws and the parents together, the insiders are the parents-in-law and the wives. So the husband or the son become an outsider. Like in cases like this, often the husband initially have distant relationship with the mother. So when he got married, he may put a lot of stuff onto the wife and expect the wife to deal for him with the mother-in-law. And gradually, the two women really focused on him, and he became as underfunctioned, and the two women fixated on him and criticized him and want to shape him up. So in this situation, we have the triangle of the insiders being the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, and hoping to shape up the husband or the son. The impaired person is the husband or the son. Maybe he will resort to drinking, gambling, and having an affair. So clinical strategies, I think for the wife, she can learn to lessen her involvement, her over-involvement with her mother-in-law, and decrease her efforts at managing her husband. So far, the focus of the two women are on the husband. And so if she can minimize her efforts at managing her husband and give her husband more freedom and responsibility to deal directly with his mother, the husband can function better. And third is to lower her reactivity and help to create atmosphere to facilitate the husband and his mother to build a more successful relationship. And fourth, to focus her function as more of a wife than as a mother and daughter-in-law, being self-focused more. Fifth is explore how her positioning in her primary triangle impacts on her present triangle with her husband and mother-in-law. Whether her family of origin experience will propel her to really fixate on somebody beside herself and to fix another person's problem.
Could you take a step to the left again?
Okay.
Is it easier if I move this over here a little bit? Is it easier if I move like that, or is it better if I
Yeah, this is better.
like that?
Yeah. Oh, so I don't. Okay. Yeah. So in such triangle for the husband, I think he can learn to take more responsibility for his dysfunction and deal with the dysfunction. Assume more responsibility for dealing with his own mother, and also need to deal with the emotional factors, like how he become distancing from his wife and mother. Another version of the same triangle is the patient, the underfunctioning person is the wife, with the husband wanting to fix the wife, and the wife's own mother also wanting to fix the wife, the daughter. So it's the same way, same triangle, but a different version. Both person wanting to fix, shape up the one of the spouse. The fourth kind of pattern that I noticed is the couple, the young couple, being against a biological parent. So the two young couple become insiders, being quite antagonistic towards one of the biological parent who become the outsider. So in this kind of situation, frequently there's the domineering mother or mother-in-law, and the son used to be complacent, and then there's the daughter-in-law who may be also a bit domineering. And initially, the son and the daughter, the son and the mother, may have a close but conflictual, ambivalent relationship even before the son's marriage. And after the son's marriage, the son get very close with the wife and escape or avoided the mother. So in a way, create a situation of two against the outside world, the couple stuck together and being quite antagonistic towards the biological parent. And there will be a great deal of conflict and tension after marriage. It's like a hot kitchen. So we can see at the beginning, there's distant relationship between the the mother and the father-in-law. So the mother spent a lot of effort on the son. So the mother has great fusion with the son. The mother may used to be a protector of the son, being very caring of him. So having a very fused relationship even before the son's marriage. The son may have much ambivalence towards this relationship. It's kind of love and hate, needing the mother's care, but also hating the mother's care and control. And so marrying, in a way, give him some leeway to avoid or to escape the mother's control. So after marrying, this son developed a very close relationship with a wife, very intense relationship, while distancing from the mother. So the mother will feel kind of rejected or distanced by the son, and feeling, of course, not comfortable. So the mother's sensitivity to the distance from the son will also affect her feeling or her relationship with the daughter. So very often the mother would think that since the daughter-in-law entered the family, her relationship with the son changed for the worse. And so the mother-in-law would frequently blame the daughter-in-law for leading the son or the husband astray, for leading the husband or the son to be distant from her. So leading to a very conflictual relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. I think actually, just by looking at the relationship between the son and the mother, I think there is lots of unresolved emotional attachment between the mother and son here. The unresolved emotional attachment got played out in the conflict with the daughter-in-law, and so also about the mother's reactivity to being distanced. However, each of them may have different views of the situation. From the young couple's point of view, there being 2 against 1, against the mother or mother-in-law, they may see the mother as the aggressor, oppressing them. The husband may feel that he's the rescuer or protector of the wife, while the wife may see herself as victim. From the mother or mother-in-law's point of view, she may see herself as a victim. The aggressor is a wife, leading the husband astray, has bad influence on her husband, making him reject his mother. And the mother may see that the son or the husband is trying to rescue or protect the wife too much, and saw the son allied with the daughter-in-law. And there's often cut off on both sides. So this triangle, I think, illustrates a lot of the movements amongst the persons involved. So the mother has increased negativity and criticism of the daughter-in-law, and then son distance from a mom, and he became the protector and rescuer of the wife. The more he protects and rescues the wife, the more angry the mother becomes, the more negative the mother get towards the daughter-in-law. And then the son becomes even more distant from the mother, seeing the mother's negativity towards his wife. And the wife and the husband become more protective of the wife, and then have eventual cut off with the mom. So in situations like this, I think much impact is about how each one really reciprocally impact on each other. And also very helpful for each person to see his or her role in this emotional process. So I think for the husband and wife to reflect on the emotional processes with a mother or mother-in-law is important, and to see how the impact of the husband taking up the role of rescuer on the wife has been on their relationship. At one time, this is one of the situations that I talked with a couple. The wife actually see that the more the husband protect her, the harder time that she has with her mother-in-law. So I found that it's helpful for the wife and for the husband to see what they have been doing is having some impact on how the mother-in-law is reacting to them. So secondly, the husband needs to work on his unresolved emotional attachment with his mother. His running away from her and avoiding her to get more autonomy. His adopting the protector role to wife, and is actually similar to his mother's previous protector role of him. And how this unresolved emotional attachment with him is also impacting the relationship amongst all of them. Okay, so these are the 4 basic patterns that I see amongst the in-law triangles. Of course, I think there will be some more. About the triangles, I think each one of us involved will have our own emotional attachment affected in it. Yeah. So unresolved emotional attachment is also a very important factor in the in-law relationships. So how does this unresolved emotional attachment play out in the in-law and marital relationship? What are these? The unresolved attachment is the inability to be a separate individual while being involved with one's parents, as Philip Cleaver quoted. It can manifest in an independent cutoff, accommodation to keep the peace, concern about the parents' approval, rebellion or polarization with parents, efforts to change the parent, contempt, ideation, inability to see weaknesses, worry, anger, financial support, unnecessary caretaking and sympathy. The more unresolved emotional attachment that each of these three parties have, the more intense the triangle and the more difficult the relationship. The more cut-off and chronic anxiety that each party has, the more intense the triangle. So, what are the parents-in-law's unresolved emotional attachment? I think parents-in-law often feel the need to be wanted, to be helpful, lending to unsolicited helping, undue interference of the daughter-in-law's family matters. Daughter-in-law will be upset with the intrusion and create tension in the couple, and the husband will feel caught in between and to have to struggle with whether he has to defend mom or defend wife. Parents-in-law will also have the unresolved emotional attachment as they need to be validated, recognized, leading to undue vying for attention, rivalry with the daughter-in-law, downplaying the daughter-in-law's achievement, and also critical attitude towards the daughter-in-law's abilities. A third unresolved emotional attachment is insecurity about their importance, fear of being abandoned, rejected. So there will be many attempts to show that they are helpful, they are useful to the family. So some of these efforts may not be wise, may cause them to be a nuisance to the young couple. So the other thing is the fear of being a nuisance, being a burden to the family, to a young couple. So there may be times when they have sickness or they may not want something, but they are not able to articulate their own needs directly. They may usually hint or do it indirectly and gets upset when younger generation did not get the hint. How about the young wife's unresolved emotional attachment? Well, as seen from the Facebook account and also from some of my chats with the young wives, I think that they wanted to be accepted and appreciated a lot. Many may go overboard to overfunction for the husband's family. They may take up many tasks for the in-laws. For example, some wives may end up being the organizer of social events for the husband's whole clan, including uncles and nephews, wanting to earn favor, wanting to earn recognition in the clan. So running on errands for the distant relatives of parents-in-law. The husband's clan may also rely on this competent daughter-in-law to serve the kinsmen, and in turn, the daughter-in-law helps to strengthen the status of the parents-in-law and husband in the clan and amongst the relatives. Some daughter-in-law may have a sense of being territorial, guarding their family, their house in a very, very rigid way. They may be sensitive to the intrusion or interference by their parents-in-law, heavily guarded, being quite rigidly protective of the boundaries. For example, not allowing their parents-in-law to visit their kids while they are on trips, knowing that their kids actually need some care. And about the husband or the son's unresolved emotional attachment. The husband, of course, often feel caught in between, sandwiched between, not knowing how to balance their loyalty. So they may not be able to stick his ground with the mother, may succumb, may try to compromise emotionally, and they may need for approval from mother, accommodating to the mother's wishes. Or sometimes they may accommodate to their wife's wishes and have a more distant relationship with the mother. Actually, not only mother, daughter-in-law, and husband, father-in-law are involved. I think when we have in-law relationship, a lot of people in our families are also involved. Sister-in-law and brother-in-law can also play a crucial role in the relationship. So involvement and reactivity of the other in-laws. These in-laws, sister-in-law and brothers-in-law, they can play a great part in the triangle, fueling the intensity of the triangles as well. Like for the sisters, some of the sisters may be jealous of the young wives, and they may compare. So they may ally with the mother and be a team to criticize the daughter-in-law, stirring up storms, stirring up heated arguments. And for the father-in-law, his relationship with his wife or the mother-in-law is also important. Very often we found that for mother-in-law who is very involved with the young family, they may have distant relationship with their father-in-law, with her husband. So father-in-law sometimes play a background role, but important role. How he manages his relationship with his wife can also have impact on his wife, the mother-in-law's relationship with the young couple. Sometimes the father-in-law will try to be neutral or pleasing to the daughter-in-law, or help to say good things about the daughter-in-law, hoping that the mother-in-law can be less critical of the daughter-in-law. However, this kind of act, like the father-in-law speaking on behalf of the daughter-in-law, may actually incur the wrath of his wife, the mother-in-law, finding that there's also another ally in her husband, that this father-in-law is also allying with the daughter-in-law, and further make her more reactive to the daughter-in-law. Yeah, so besides father-in-law, as I said, the sister-in-law can have a vital part to play too. His jealousy and rivalry, keen comparison with her brother, can also affect the family's attitude towards the daughter-in-law. Some of the sisters may feel that they don't have as important treatment as the daughter-in-law, and may feel that the family really do not see them as important as daughter-in-law, and so may create some tension and some arguments. So having these patterns and situations, so let's hear about the voices of different kind of people here. The voices of daughters-in-law. I talked to some of the daughters-in-law, and so I get a sense that these are often what they really want. So the daughters-in-law would say that I just want to maintain cordial, distant relationship with my mother-in-law. It's quite common for these daughter-in-law to say that I don't want to have close relationship with my mother-in-law. I just want to have cordial, distant relationship with them. Polite relationship, yeah. I can have regular contact with them, but I don't want them to get too close to me. Yeah, so cordial but distant relationship is wanted. And about voice of the mother-in-law, they hope that the daughter-in-law can respect them, care for the son as she has cared for him. What about the voice of the son or the husband? Well, very often these men will say that hope that two women can be at peace with each other, reasonable with each other, and don't cause too much trouble to himself. Well, another point about young couples, since that many couples have to stay in the same house with their in-laws, I think it's very important for young couples to have better preparation, psychological as well as physical preparation to living together. Right now, I think many couples, because of convenience and necessity, they will they have no choice, so they have to live together with their in-laws. But however, I found that the psychological preparation, the kind of vision on what they will see or what they will experience is not very clear to them. So I will hope that they can pay more psychological preparation to living together. Often it seems that it is very much out of convenience and optimum usage of resources that the young couple have to live together with their elderly in-laws and sometimes even the sibling in-laws. So much better preparation is needed, like how the young husband or the son keeps his nuclear family intact. It's difficult, it's challenging, because you're staying with your own mother. And how can you maintain your own sense of your own nuclear family? It's very challenging. How he is able to establish his leadership in his family, given the heavy reliance on the elderly parents. While the elderly parents may do housework for you, may do childcare for you, so how can the man, the husband, the son, establish his leadership in this kind of situation? And how his household and his parents' household intermingle. So a clear nuclear family setting is desirable. And a young couple needs to establish their position. For example, regarding their family matters, to what extent they would allow the influence of their elderly parents. Okay, my learning as a mother-in-law. I'm 6 years into my being a mother-in-law, so I think I'm still in internship. Yeah, it's an exciting role and lots of things to learn. So, but one thing, very initial thing, is that it's just a revelation for my own sense of togetherness. So, with in-laws, coming from different background, different values, different lifestyle, yeah. So coming into contact, of course, we come into people with differences in lifestyle, in parenting, in ideas. So I think one of the initial learning for me is how for me to be clear about how I feel about my differences with my children-in-law. There may be things that I feel a bit restless or a bit reactive when I found that we have differences. So I think learning Bowen theory helps me to be more aware of how I handle my differences with my in-laws. So one day I really sit down and jot down the number of the items that I think I'm different from my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law, and see and really reflect on how I feel about that. Previously, there are some differences that I hope that can go away. There are times that I hope that my children-in-law would do can be the same as my way. So there's very much a wish for them to adopt my same way. And so there are times when I feel a bit restless and reactive when my children-in-law did not behave or act the same as I do. So after that exercise, when I really jot down the number of items that I found I'm different from them, oh, that's really a revelation for me. I found it's more than 10, not a short list at all. So I found that, hey, I started to think, what would it be like if I'm the other person on the other side? Like if I found that my mother-in-law will have so many things feeling different from me and feeling a bit uncomfortable. Yeah. So that's a revelation to me. And then I realized that, yeah, we are different people coming from different backgrounds. So I need to be more aware of whether these differences are really a matter of life and death. If it is not a matter of life and death, so why should I still hold on to the hope that they can be the same as me? So I found that after doing this kind of reflection, I become freer. I feel that, yeah, they are their own person, and I was raised in a different background, and it's very natural for us to have differences. And yet, also, I see that they can handle things all right, and though may not be in my way, but still all right. So reflecting on my list of differences with them helps a lot. Helps me to be, I think, more relaxed with them. And so I think using my thinking more, think about what contribute to these differences. How do these differences affect my relationship with him or her? Are these differences all that important? Why is it that he or she has to conform to my way? So I'm curious about my own need for them to be the same with me. And after having this kind of thinking process, I think I started to let go more. And then I also begin to realize and accept that they're really a different person with different background, and it's not right for me to expect a copy and paste form of me, right? So of course I hope that I can really have a person that is very similar to me, which is easy for me to handle, to deal with. But I need to respect that they are different people and have different background. And then another thing that I think is stirred up quite a lot of thinking in me is that I thought I know that my son and my daughter is grown up and young adults, but I found that I still worry about them. I know that they're grown up, but I think emotionally I have not let them. I have not accepted that they're grown up. So I think this worry about my children really propelled me to wanting to exert more influence on my in-laws, on my grown-up children. So I hope that they can follow my way and do things in my way so that then they will have a smoother path. And so I think it stems from my not realizing that they're really grown up. Emotionally, I still have not really accepted they're grown-up people. So that's also a revelation to me that I need to reconcile with my own need to hold on to my children. So I need to accept that my adult children are grown-up people responsible for their own lives. I should not expect myself to be responsible for their lives, and they do not expect me to. Yeah. So also really drilling this thought into my mind that they are grown-up people and I have to accept emotionally that they are really grown up. I'm not responsible for them. Also helps to free myself up quite a lot. So I think right now I'm much better at having them face their own consequence of their actions and have less worry about them. Another thing I found useful is really to build person-to-person contact with them. I realized that before I'm acting more in a task-oriented way with my in-laws. So I will be doing chores for them or they will be doing chores for them. We discuss, but not so much about person-to-person contacts. So realizing that, hey, actually, I have not developed enough curiosity in them helps me to pay more attention to their lives. I make more effort to understand my daughter-in-law, my son-in-law, and also try to do things that may be desired by them. Like I would boil chicken soup for them, knowing that they like them, do small errands for them, like taking their kids to school and there's a need, buy them books on parenting and birth positions, show interest to know them more. So building these person-to-person contacts, I think, is one way to help with the parent, for me to grow up as a parent-in-law. So make myself available, help out, but try not to be a nuisance. I want to be a resource to young people. but try not to impose my helpfulness. So I would just offer when there's a need. Yeah. And I realize that when there's a relationship, there can be negotiation of differences, and compromises is easier. If I do not have good relationship with the in-laws, it's harder for us to deal with differences. And also I have to remember these, the following ideas, is that the more I impose my ideas on them, hoping them to conform to my way of doing things, the more they will be distant with me, the less influence that I will have on them, even if those influences are deemed to be good and intentional and well-intentioned. The more I refrain from pushing the young people to conform with my way of doing things, the more I honor their individuality, the more willing they will be to approach me. Yeah, I found that realizing these 2 points also helped me to learn more about how to relate with my in-laws. So basically, I think as a mother-in-law, I think the do's will be a resource instead of being a hindrance, be a resource to their families. And then do's for the daughters-in-law, respect the bonding between the husband and her mother, set clear boundaries, state her I position, and how draft out how she would like to be a daughter-in-law. What is it that she wants to attain in this role? And start person-to-person contacts with her parents-in-law. Do's for sons and husbands, continue to have individual person-to-person contacts with mom. Do not always visit his parents together with his wife. Individual visits by himself to the parents are very valuable too. Yeah, this is interesting because I found that after marriage, the sons want to bring their wives and children together. So very often, the whole group will come to visit the parents. However, as a parent, and also as a parent-in-law, I also value the individual contact from the son or from the daughter. And so while I enjoy those big groups visit, I also hunger for those individual visits by my son, by my daughter. So I think having these individual contacts, even though one get married, is also very helpful. And do's also do not side with any party, be objective and see the facts, and maintain adult-to-adult relationship with the mother. Try to be on equal footing with the mother. So in summary, by talking about in-law triangles, I talk about what contribute to intensity of the relationship in Hong Kong context, basically due to the large or the great physical and psychological interdependency on each other, and the emotional process involved, different kinds of triangles, common patterns of triangles, and also unresolved emotional attachment of different parties, voices from different parties, and the way to go. Okay, so that's it. Yeah.
Are there questions?
Yeah, I was, when you first started the presentation, it looked like you were talking about culturally that daughter-in-laws joined their husband's family.
Right.
But then at the end of the presentation, you were talking about your relationship as the mother of of your daughter. I mean, how do you think about, when I went to China, our guide lived with his wife's mother.
Right.
And what do you think about the differences between the cultural phenomenon of the daughter-in-law living with the husband's family and then the relationships with the wife's family?
Please say that again.
So what you were talking about was the daughter-in-law's relationship with her husband
Right.
and his family.
Yeah.
What difference does it make in terms of the relationships with the wife's mother and her family?
The wife's. What differences?
How is it different with the wife's?
If they live
in-law?
with the
Or-
wife's family.
Or how they relate?
How is the relationships different because they're living, because the husband has the mother-in-law, not the wife?
Oh, okay. Yeah, usually. So, two situations. One is the daughter-in-law living with the husband's side, right? The other is the son-in-law living with the wife's side.
Yeah.
This one is much tougher. Much tougher, more difficult. This one is easier, much easier.
Because the son is more valued by by his mother-in-law that he's living with? I don't understand.
Well, for this situation, I think the relationship between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law is usually very intense and tense. They often vie for the man's attention, approval, and influence. So this is in itself a very challenging relationship. Whereas for this one, partly I think with a man, they are not in the house a lot of times. They are not in charge of household affairs that much. And the men used to be quite laid back and a bit more accepting of the old grannies, the mother-in-law's way of doing things. Yeah, so they are more lenient, more accepting. And also, similarly, the mother-in-law is usually more doting on the son-in-law. Yeah, the mother-in-law is usually more accepting, more tolerating of the son-in-law. So a very different chemistry.
Okay, what happens, okay, this emphasizes the son who really wants to take care of his parents. What happens, but that's not always the case where the son's parents need to take care of. What happens if he marries into a family where his wife's parents are much more in need of being taken care of? How does it, so do they have a huge conflict? The wife always have to move in with the son's family? Or do they have, the wife's mother is really diabetic and needs constant care, or some other reason why it's the wife's parents that, the son's parents can take care of themselves, the wife's parents are poor, ill, etc., and would the son and wife move in with her family so that her parents' needs can be helped because they need it more? Does that has to happen sometimes? How often?
Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
And how much is this influenced by the 30, 40 years of, it's no longer, but the one-child policy? I've been to Hong Kong and China, but 1981. It's very different now, obviously, but how much is the one-child policy affected, almost every adult child now is the child of is a sole firstborn, as opposed to 300 years ago, 200 years ago, maybe there's 6 or 8 or 10.
I think the one-child policy has made family having more pressure, especially when the parents grow old. So you have two person, like a couple, taking care of four for elderly parents. So the pressure is very much. You
So
don't
the
have siblings to
intensity
share.
Is there, you know, the son's parents don't have other children that they can live with. The son's gotta, when he gets married, live with his parents.
Yeah.
Because they have no other option, because
Right.
they have no other children.
Right, right,
Wow.
right.
And is this a matrilineal society or a patrilineal society? I don't know.
Sorry, I don't.
Is this is the Chinese culture, at least in Hong Kong, matrilineal? It seems like it from this, that the mother-in-law is the powerful one, and the father is relatively silent. Or the mother-in-law, the wife, the mother-in-law is dominant, and her husband is subordinate, and
Well, sometimes it depends on the kind of native village that you see. China has different regions and different villages. Each has different
Right.
customs or traditions. So some families, if they come from like a province called Fujian, then the men play a very dominant role in the family. So it's patriarchal. The women are busy with household work, but may not have absolute power. Yeah, but for a lot of families in Hong Kong these days, women really have quite a lot of influence in household affairs. So
in most family, the
Yeah.
wife is the dominant
yeah, very often.
member of the family.
Yeah.
In generally, obviously, there's many cultural differences. Fujian versus Mandarin versus,
Yeah,
I mean, in religion. Yeah.
yeah.
I got lots of questions, but I'm a layman. I've come here to learn more. Thanks for coming halfway around the world. Ni hao ma.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, Li.
I was interested in a variation that would be more basic and fundamental than even the cultural differences. And what I was thinking about is that there would be a relationship between the degree to which a daughter resolves her attachment to her own mother
Mm-hmm.
and her ability to be a self with her mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Thinking in my own life how that has worked.
Yes, yeah.
And
Definitely.
the degree to which I believe my children have the freedom to pursue relationships with their in-laws that are really about them and those people,
Yeah.
and less about me and them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a 40-year effort,
Mm-hmm.
not to mention generations that
Yeah.
preceded me.
Yeah. I
I
think
that's something interesting to consider in all this.
yeah, exactly. I think just now I mentioned more about the husband side. Actually, the wife, the young wife, also needs to work on her unresolved emotional attachment, which will definitely have impact on the in-law relationship. Like I have a case that the young wife is very rigidly guarding her territory against the mother-in-law. So she's very territorial, and even though there may be good intention about the mother-in-law helping her, but she will really be very protective, very sensitive to any kind of perceived intrusion. You have questions?
Well, lots, but, I mean, Henry Kissinger, the famous Secretary of State, says over the last 5 years, the Chinese culture has been the dominant, strongest culture, with the exception of the last 200. And this, how does this relate to that? I mean, are Chinese families matrilineal, or are they patrilineal? Matriarchal, or are they patriarchal?
Traditionally, it seems to be patriarchal. But I think in actual fact, partly because of the more amount of time that the wife, the mother, has in the family, and she used to be having closer contact with the children. So in a way, the family has more influence from the mother. So very often it's patriarchal in name, but matriarchal in practice.
Does the communist one-child policy increase the power of the mother-in-law compared to 100 years ago when maybe there were 6, 8, 10 children? Or does it decrease the power of the mother-in-law?
Well, I think, I don't know whether this has to do with the one-child policy or not. So actually, I think the power of the mother-in-law has increased in the sense that people feel freer.
Because, and she only has one child to dote on, not 3 or 6. And is this, in other cultures like Vietnamese, a very strong culture familially, Koreans maybe also, I don't know if you've studied those cultures, but would this be a similar, would your analysis of Vietnamese families probably be very similar?
Yeah, some similarities.
What about Thai or Filipino or Korean or Japanese?
I would say Korean families are even more traditional. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know I'd agree. Okay.
Other questions? I'm not sure how to formulate this question. Is there someone else that had a question? Bowen theory talks about not cultural differences, but science, the science of the human. The human functions in certain ways pretty predictably. And culture alters a certain amount of that. How can you see, how do you balance the two? And you do understand more also of the U.S. culture because you've been here for so much, as well as other cultures that you've experienced. How do you see the two juxtaposed so that you can think your way out of some challenging situations when you've been trained culturally?
I think culture has the impact of shaping my expectation.
Yes.
Like traditionally, we expect daughter-in-law to be really obedient to the daughter-in-law, to the mother-in-law, right? So initially, I still get some of that, right? Even though I have lots of Western education. So this expectation that my daughter-in-law, quote, for example, my daughter-in-law should be more obedient of me, may still linger in me. So that may cause me to be more reactive, more sensitive to any deviation on her part, right? If I expect that she is more obedient to me and yet she is not behaving that way, because of my expectation culturally, then I will have a bit more reaction. So I think having this space to think about, to reflect on how these cultural expectations really impact on me is very helpful. Then I can think and ponder more about, is it still good for me to hold on to this kind of concept, or whether I can deal with it in a more enlightening way. I think how I deal with these issues also have to do with my own emotional maturity. So the culture may expect, of course, we be obedient or we to be courteous and respectful of others. So my emotional maturity will require me to think what is a good way or desirable way to manifest that. How can I do it in a respectful but a way that can both sides can accept. Yeah. So I think cultural expectation may imprint some of our expectation or enhance some of our sensitivity. But we also need our emotional maturity to help us to deal with those sensitivity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, could I just say one more thing? That I think what I was thinking about is kind of piggybacks on what you were saying, that, you know, that the relationship with a daughter-in-law has to do with your relationship with your son, not your son, but one
Right.
son.
Right, right.
And that the more reactivity or intensity that goes into that relationship, the more the triangle can surface.
Yeah.
You know, and that mothers who are more comfortable with some kind of mature relationship with their child, I think have more flexibility
Yeah.
when that child has a partner.
Yeah.
You know, and that in Chinese culture, there would be some sort of variation as to how people operate in that triangle.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I think the mother's relationship with the son really has a very big impact on her relationship with the daughter-in-law. Yeah.
You know, they don't have to be in competition.
Right.
You
Right.
know, that.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking the last part that you gave about your own thinking about your relationships with your in-laws is very relevant to every American family. You know, I mean, that is, I think, beyond culture in a way.
Uh-huh.
Are there other questions?
Well, it just seems to be like how you started out. If you are getting married and have to move into your, as a daughter, as a girl, having to move into your mother-in-law's house, that, and I think you mentioned that's one of the most dreaded questions before marriage. I think that would just add a whole other level of complexity and possibly intensity to living. I mean, I just think about if I had to move in with my mother-in-law, it would be very different from not having to. And it sounds like when you moved on, and I don't know about your situation, but maybe you didn't have to live with your mother-in-law, and maybe your daughter-in-law doesn't live with you, I kind of think maybe. So then like Anne's comment, then I'm just thinking that's like every family has to, you know, we all have to deal with those kinds of things. But living in the same household would be something. When I first got married, my mother-in-law gave me a list of 23 people that I had to give Christmas presents to. And we didn't have any money. My husband was in law school, and I thought, what am I gonna do? But, you know, so it took till the next year to say I can't do that. But, you know, the first year, we made presents out of toilet paper and things like that, and all the grandkids said, these are not even presents, they're so awful. But thank you very much, and it's just interesting thinking about it in a culture and then thinking about it as humans dealing in relationships. Thank you.
There's a question on Facebook. Is it okay if I ask?
All right,
I mean,
because
just
it's
really
last
quick.
nine, but that's the only one we've had, so go ahead.
How does togetherness work positively between a mother and daughter-in-law? Through a Bowen theory angle? Is there any way?
I think mother-in-law and daughter-in-law can also share comfort and solace with each other. The mother the mother-in-law can offer support, enlightenment to the daughter-in-law. Like the daughter-in-law may face some life issues, some decisions, and if the mother-in-law can offer support or affection care, that would be, I think, a positive form of togetherness.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Chan. Let me let you know about next month, the Thursday meeting. Dr. Barbara Lehman will be speaking next month on living systems in the lectionary. She's going to be doing the Thursday night talk for the Friday Faith and Leadership, or what do you call it now? Conference on Friday, I believe. So that's supposed to tie in to some extent. Please don't forget to sign the book as you go out, if you haven't already. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow if you wish to come to the clinical conference, which will be held here.
At what time?
9:30.